Hi everyone, my name is Jennifer Del Aguila and I will be presenting about the fight against racial inequality at the Olympics. More specifically, my hypothesis will be touching on the following. Even though there has been amazing growth of involvement of people of color and their participation in the Olympics, unfortunately, it is nowhere near where it should be due to the long-time battle of racial inequality, as well as due to media coverage and real-life social issues. As you can see on this slide, I have presented the pictures of Gwen Berry and the Great Britain soccer team. I'll be referring back to some of our coursework as I believe it helps illustrate the meaning behind this presentation. I'll be touching more specifically on SAGE and the meaning of social structure. SAGE refers to social structure in three ways: in patterns amongst relationships, in patterns amongst social position, and patterns amongst distribution of power and rewards. SAGE brings social structure up to highlight the hegemony or dominance and influence within sports. Take, for example, in terms of social position in sport, SAGE mentions the industry has been created so that women and African Americans rarely hold prestigious positions. This is important to note since I'll be speaking more about Miss Sha'Carri Richardson. As you can see here, she is a track star for an Olympic trials. Sha'Carri Richardson made history when she crossed the finish line for the women's 100-meter dash at the U.S. Olympic track and field trial. In an instant, the 21-year-old became an overnight sensation as she set her sights on representing the nation in Tokyo. Unfortunately, only a few days later, the world received very different news. Richardson was suspended for a month over a positive marijuana test, which ultimately resulted in her complete exclusion from the Olympic Games. The very differences that are overlooked and even celebrated for other athletes are weaponized against Black women. Take Michael Phelps, a unique genetic blessing, including unusually long arms, double-jointed ankles, and a body that produces half the lactic acid of the average athlete. Phelps has been praised as a marvel for these genetic mutations, which enhance his ability to excel in his sport. Meanwhile, athletes like Christine Mumbai and Beatrice Masalji, whose bodies naturally produce testosterone at a higher level than the average woman, are shamed and ultimately disqualified from competing at all. The double standard is glaring. Black women are required to alter their bodies and practices inside and out, simply to step onto the playing field. And once they finally have a spot, their achievements are denied and their work is undermined, punished, and disqualified for reasons that are profoundly unfair. Unfortunately, even though there is a reoccurrence in the Olympic sports world, there has been a growing involvement of people of color participating in the Olympics. Take, for example, Yet Ferran from Cuba, John Baxter, actually the first African American man to win a gold medal, representing Team USA for track and field, Alice Deering from Great Britain, participating in the women's 800-meter freestyle, Simone Biles, Team USA, gymnastics, Sunny Lee, an Asian American, part of Team USA for gymnastics, and Sydney McLaughlin, Team USA, track and field. There's a lot more names that I could be mentioning, but these are some of the ones that I picked. Moving on, in 1968, 6 months after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, Tommie Smith and John Carlos stepped up to the podium to receive their Olympic medals in Mexico City. They had won gold and bronze in the 200-meter, but now neither men were wearing shoes. As the U.S. national anthem played, they bowed their heads and raised gloved fists, in what has now become an iconic image of protest against social injustice, and specifically for social injustices within the Olympics. The black socks and no shoes represented Black American poverty, while the gloves symbolized Black American strength and unity. Afterwards, they were expelled from the games and both received death threats. Carlos was once interviewed in 2008 and said, "I went up there as a dignified Black man and said, 'What's going on is wrong.'" In conclusion, the fight against racial inequality will forever be a long and hard process to deal with, but never impossible, especially when doing it at the Olympic level. It's important to note that all of these issues are still very much happening and unfortunately will still be probably happening, but it's up to us as viewers and athletes competing, and even people who are not involved with the Olympics, to see the issue and fight against what is wrong. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this presentation.